Normally, I'd like to just kind of find out a little more about some of your experiences during World War II. So let me start out by asking you where you were born and where you grew up.
Oh, well, I was born in Dallas, and I came to town here when I was in second grade,
Okay.
and
So
went
what year
through
was
high
that?
school here.
Did you graduate from Iowa Falls?
Yes, 37.
Class of 37. And when did you go into the service?
January 7th of 41.
Okay, so it was before we were really involved in the war.
Yeah, at that time they had this go in for a year, and then you would get your time served and then you'd get out.
Mm-hmm.
I had 30 days right to the day
Before you were going to be
before I
out.
was going to get out.
And of course you didn't get out then because
No,
of Pearl
no.
Harbor.
Mhm.
Where were you at when Pearl Harbor happened?
I was in South Dakota then, in 4th Cavalry at Sturgis. They had an old army post there, and it's a cavalry outfit. And
Is that Fort Meade?
yes,
Mm-hmm.
when I went in, they asked us what we was going to do, or would like to do, and I said coastal artillery or something like that. I thought would be a nice thing, and I'd be in California playing in the water and all that stuff. So they changed it to South Dakota then.
Okay.
And just after I got there, they mechanized one half of their regiment there. And I fortunately got into the mechanized part.
Does that mean like tanks and things like that? or-
Well, at first they started out with scout cars, which was a thing that not many people knew about. It was a big old armored car that held about 8 people. And they had motorcycles as their scouts and runners and all this stuff. And we used those for probably a couple years, or maybe not quite that long, but we went to maneuvers in Louisiana and Texas and Tennessee and
Mhm.
different places in those. Then when Jeeps came out, then we got Jeeps to go along with the armored cars, and they got rid of the motorcycles. And later on, the armored cars were a 6-wheel all-drive. They were just like a light tank with wheels.
Okay.
Same armament and same size guns and all that stuff on them. And that's what I ended up in, were those. And they weren't bad. And
How long were you at Fort Meade?
I was there 2 years.
Where'd you go from there?
Then we went to Mojave Desert in California. We went there for desert maneuvers, and we were preparing to go to Africa.
Mhm.
And we were there for, let's see, probably 6-8 months.
Okay.
And our camp there was, well, when we disembarked from the train, well, we left South Dakota. It was 34 degrees below zero. And we left from Rapid City on a train. And then when we went to the Desert Center in California, and we were all bundled up and had all the wool uniforms and all that stuff on.
A little warmer when you got there.
When we
wasn't
got there, we were stripped down to our waists by 9 o'clock in the morning. But the camp there wasn't one. They had a bunch of tents all boxed up and everything, so we were the first ones in any camp there.
Mhm.
And they laid out our own camps, and we did desert training from there. We did get a little bit better armored cars, and then more Jeeps and all that stuff.
Were you married at that point or single?
Single.
Okay. I'm going to, is it possible to move that lamp up
Surely.
I got one side of your face in shadow, and that won't look as good. Can we move it out to the middle of the room a little more? And
Surely.
we can light that side of your face a little bit. Let me see how that looks. Yeah, I think that's
That ain't
better.
better?
I think that's better.
Uh-huh.
The camera focuses on the source of light and then puts you in shadow, but this, yeah, that does look better.
Mhm.
Okay. Okay, so you're in the Mojave Desert training to go to North Africa.
Right, uh-huh.
And how long were you say 6 to 8 months there?
Yes, uh-huh.
Okay. And what kind of training did you have there? I mean, what did you do? Go out in the desert in
Yeah, we...
survival training? Or
Yeah,
what?
we were actually... we'd probably get back to our main camp, every 3 weeks or maybe a month.
Okay.
And they gave us A rations, which is partially canned goods and fresh meat. And if you can imagine getting fresh meat out there in the desert, but they'd give us, they'd come out and they'd give us one ham, which would be like a 20-pounder. And that was supposed to be for like 8 or 10 men.
Okay.
And that was quite a joke because we had nothing to cook it with or warm it up. It was cooked, I mean, but it's kind of a weird way of doing things.
Okay.
But we did quite a bit of training there. It was a little, not mountainous, but a lot of hills and stuff where you could try to work your ways around them and all this type of training.
Now, at that time, there was a lot of fighting going on in North Africa.
Yes,
right?
there was.
With Rommel. And
Right.
so that's where you thought you were going to go, but
That
you,
was
you
their
never went there,
intention.
did you?
No, we didn't.
Why was that?
Well, that was they were starting to prepare to go to England or to Italy then, and they wouldn't have needed any more troops in Africa.
Okay.
So we went to Camp Maxey, Texas, then as a staging area, and we were there probably two months maybe, and then we were sent to a staging area in New York, just outside of New York City, and they told us then that we was going to go to England for the invasion of Europe.
And now this would have been, what, in early 1944?
It was the latter part of 43.
Okay. And what was the number or name of your unit that you were in?
The 4th Cavalry Squadron is what we were.
Okay.
We were a real small unit, which would be attached to larger divisions, and we were actually their recon outfit that would check out the areas where they were planning on their drives, and
So you'd be a very advanced
oh
unit,
yes,
ahead of the main body.
yeah.
Okay, so how long were you in New York?
Oh, we were there until let's see, it would have been latter part of November. Then I think it was December 3rd we went to England.
What part of England did you go to?
It was Titworth.
Okay. And you went over by ship, I assume?
Yeah, we had a Argentina meat boat.
How many men were on that ship? How many troops?
I'm not sure, probably 800 maybe.
How long did it take you to get there?
2 weeks. We took the north route, and it was cold. It was something else, but we got through without any big incidents. And
Were you part of a convoy or something?
yes, we were.
I assume there was a danger of submarine attack, wasn't there?
Oh yes, we on this boat. Of course, they didn't have any of the American sailors. They were Argentina. I suppose it was a boat that they, I don't know what you want to call it, took over from Argentina to use for this purpose. So we had to man the guns on the boat for anti-aircraft.
It did have some weapons then.
Just small 20 millimeter aircraft guns.
And did you ever have to do that duty on the
Oh
guns?
yes, yeah, we took turns on that.
Ever have any kind of scare or?
Oh, we had
kind of
submarine scares. And we had these little destroyers come around and throw off their anti-submarine death bombs and all that stuff.
Mhm.
But we never actually saw any boats or submarines or anything.
Is that the first time you'd been on the ocean?
Yes, it was.
Did you get seasick?
No, I was fortunate.
Did a lot of other guys get seasick?
We had one guy that, you know, they had these big old fur, not fur, but heavy wool overcoats. They would come down almost to your ankles. And none of them fit correctly. And he was a tall, skinny guy. He was over 6 feet tall. And they had a door that going down into the center of the boat there. And he stood behind that door for 2 weeks. He couldn't eat. He couldn't do anything. He was a sick man.
I've heard from a lot of other people I've interviewed that they didn't like that trip over and back.
Then when we got to England there, we were in a English army camp, which was in the forest there. And what it was wooden floors and sides of wood up about 4 feet, and the rest of it was canvas.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't too bad. It was, but we'd get a few buzz bombs and things like that coming over.
Really?
And everybody would write in their letters and stuff, "Oh, I've got the greatest thing to tell you when I get home about the buzz bomb scare," and all this stuff, which was actually nothing at all. But but it.
Now, where were you near a city? You weren't near London, were you?
No, we weren't.
But yet.
We were. Titworth was right on the coast there, between Europe and England. There.
Is it near Southampton?
Not too far from there.
So you had quite a few buzz bombs. This is like the V1 bombs, is that right? Mm-hmm. Did you ever see any of those go over? Or anything?
Oh yes.
Tell me about that. What did you see?
Well, they were. You could hear the motors on them, and they were they moved fairly fast. But there's no problem with them until you could hear the motor quit. Then you knew that it was going to go down. And we had them, hit probably, I don't think this closest one was over 2 miles from us. Never did any damage to our area.
Make a lot of noise?
Yeah, you could tell what was going on. We were in England one time on a pass, and we were there. Everything was blacked out, of course, and for some reason, most of the pubs, of course that was where we all went, was on the lower level.
Okay.
And they had the big heavy curtains, and they had the doors, double doors, so it'd be no light showing. And their building was blown up maybe half a block from us or something. But that's as close as I was ever to one there. But there's a lot of damage in London where you could see where they'd been.
Did they have blackouts and things like that while you were in London?
Oh yes. Mm-hmm. I think probably I was in London maybe, twice, and then the third time they had an alert and we had to go back right away.
Mm-hmm. And this is all in late '43 we're talking about?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. What did you do with your time there? Were you just waiting for the invasion, or were you doing some additional training while you were there?
We were doing a certain amount of training, not a lot, but then in spring, in February and March, we did a lot of training then, getting ready for the invasion. We did mock drills and a lot of preparation of your vehicles for landing. And
Now, were there a lot of American troops in that area at that time?
no, not in our area. It didn't seem like there was too many. I don't know where they all were, but when we went to the staging area to get on our boats, there's lots of troops there then.
And that would have been like in June of
Yes.
44. Closer to D-Day anyway.
Yeah.
And were there troops there besides American troops?
No, that's all that was in
All
the
American?
area that I saw it was in.
Okay. So you were actually involved in the invasion?
Yeah.
Okay, tell me about that.
Well, we was on a what they call it, landing LST anyway.
Landing ship tanks?
Yeah. And we was out there almost 2 weeks waiting for the better weather and then
Was it raining a lot, you mean? Or?
no, it was fairly nice weather really. It's damp and foggy and everything. And you couldn't tell really. It was foggy enough that you couldn't tell how many ships was in the area with us. You could see other LSTs and stuff around there, but there's probably, I don't know how many men on ours, probably 40 in that area somewhere.
Now, would your unit be taking along, you wouldn't just be troops going onto the beach, you would take along your equipment, your vehicles, right?
Oh yes,
What kind of vehicles were you taking with you?
we had armored cars and jeeps.
Okay. And they were riding the LST with you?
Yes,
Okay.
Yeah, that's where we sat.
Waiting.
Yeah.
Okay, so you were waiting, you said a couple weeks for the weather to clear.
Yeah. It was, well, I think maybe the first week was maybe organizing everything for but the last few days we were waiting for the weather to clear up.
Okay.
And in the morning of the 6th there, it did clear up, and there was, I went to Utah Beach, and where most of them all went to Omaha Beach. But there's a couple little islands out there, just off the coast, so we went to those, and they weren't occupied. So
Okay.
then we went on into the beach and landed
You actually
there.
had a landing at those islands? Because you didn't know if they were occupied or not?
No, there was probably 2 platoons of us,
Okay.
and it was empty. There was nobody there.
Then you went on to Utah Beach.
Yeah.
Tell me about that. I mean, we're talking about June 6th now, right?
Yeah.
The actual day of the invasion. Tell me about that, what that was like and what you were doing.
Well, when we landed there, the ends dropped open, as you saw in the pictures and stuff. And we went off with we got one armored car off, and the second one wouldn't start, and it got flooded out. So we had to drop a tow to it and pull it out of the road so the rest of them could get off. But it was a nice bright morning, no enemy fire of any kind, and we got on the beach and probably went in 200 yards, and then we started running into fire.
What kind of fire?
Oh, it was probably their large guns. And
Artillery fire?
Pardon?
Artillery fire?
Yeah. And not any small arm fire at all.
Okay.
And then, of course, we kept on moving. We got in, and we were the first units.
Now, before you actually hit the beach, how many other LSTs would there have been nearby around you?
Well, it was rest of our regiment. And then when we got off, I never saw anything again. So I know that there was a lot of others came in after that.
How many were on the beach before you?
None.
You were the first. Okay. So after you started encountering this artillery fire, what happened then?
Well, our mission was to contact the 82nd Airborne.
That's the paratroopers?
Yeah.
Mhm.
And they were supposed to be in there about 5 miles. And we ran into pretty heavy resistance. And then they came over with these, what am I trying to say? Cargo planes with the troops in them.
Okay.
And we got in there probably a couple miles, or maybe 3, and we couldn't go any farther. And then these guys came in. They really weren't paratroopers, but they were troops flowing in on these cargo planes, and or I wouldn't say cargo planes, they were glider planes. And they'd come over us, and then they'd go down. And they were landing, a lot of them, right in the center of the resistance there. And had to be lots and lots of casualties there. But finally, we were able to break through that the next day.
These gliders, you say they were landing right in the middle of the Germans. Were you close enough to see that?
Oh, yes. Yeah, they were 100 yards ahead of us.
Where the gliders would land and the troops would jump out and...
And then they'd get shot.
And you were running into resistance, you mean like German, like, were these like machine gun nests or
Yeah,
tanks or what
tanks,
kind of...
and then there was, they had some bunkers around there too. But they weren't, in the area I was in, they weren't any big resistance to us. But we didn't have too many casualties that first couple days, but we did knock out a lot of people there.
Now, what kind of a weapon were you carrying at that point?
I was on an armored car, and I had a submachine gun, and we had a .50 caliber on a track around the turret there, and we had a 37 millimeter gun that we used anti-tank shells for.
Okay.
But then we started running into these hedgerows at that time, and they were caused us a lot of trouble to get through them.
Let me take a pause here and move the camera a little bit just for variety. Okay.
Then we did.
Tell me about the hedgerows and what happened.
Yeah. Well, our armored cars, we'd get hung up on them really. They had 3 sets of wheels on them, tires, and you'd get over with your first one and you might get hung up, or so we had to kind of look around for our openings to get through. and or get on the roads, but they were mined or heavily guarded by these German soldiers. And we did catch up to the 82nd, and they landed as they should and everything, but they did run into a lot of trouble. I'd went down roads there, I suppose, a mile long, where they had landed and reorganized and started up these roads. And I don't know if they would walked into a trap or what, or if it was aircraft, but they were just dead in pairs all down the road there.
Like they'd been walking down the road together.
Yeah, and then they were strafed or ambushed or something.
Was this near a town or just out in the fields?
Oh, this is near St. Mary Glees. And then we were attached to the 82nd there until
I mean, you just stayed with the 82nd Airborne?
yeah, we worked with them until St. Mary Glees was taken. And
How long did that take?
oh, I'm not sure. 10 days maybe.
There are a lot of Germans holding that town, right?
Yeah, there was. We were out on patrols all the time. We would make a dash down a little road, and we'd kind of break through their first line of resistance, and then we'd get down a ways and turn around and come back and kind of work at them from the rear.
Now, the Germans were defending that town with tanks or just like small machine guns and things?
Well, actually, the town, it had a lot of fortresses in it at the ocean, facing the ocean. I actually wasn't in the taking of the town itself. We were on the outer perimeter all the time. But the troops that did take it, then we went in afterwards. Well, one day I went out, well, let's see, there's 3 of us on a Jeep, and I think we picked up over 200 prisoners. They were, they'd just see us and they'd throw down their weapons, and all we had was a little machine gun on the front end of the, sitting on the hood of the Jeep.
They were ready to surrender?
Oh yes, yeah, they were.
That was after, that wasn't towards the beginning, that was later on after the St. Mary Glees fell, or?
Yeah, right, the next day or two.
Mm-hmm. What was going on around you during those 10 days? I assume more and more troops were being landed behind you?
And we did have a lot of fighter planes come over and strafe us and drop bombs. And I always said, and that was one of the dumbest things, or one of the many dumb things I did, I'd never dig a foxhole. The night they'd come over there, they called him Bed Check Charlie. And he'd come putting by, and then pretty soon a couple 3 planes would come over and drop some bombs and stuff. And the night there I'd say, boy, if I get through tonight, I'm going to dig me a foxhole tomorrow night. Well, the next day we'd be moving around and I'd say, oh hell, I'm not going to do it. Then the next day I'd go through the same thing again. Jump down in a crater or something and lay against the side of it. But anyway, I still didn't do it.
Never did, or?
Never did. No, I never ever dug a foxhole, other than in training.
Uh-huh.
And we did have one platoon get strafed by our own planes and completely wiped out.
Strafed by
Our planes.
Our own planes?
Mhm.
Did that happen a lot?
That's the only, I'd heard about other ones that happened, but that's the only time it happened to us.
That's just through mistakes.
Yeah, strictly.
Well,
Of course, our problem was that we basically were ahead of the infantry and the armor and that stuff. So it's understandable that they make mistakes.
yeah, you were definitely in the front lines.
Yeah.
Front lines, and you were within sight of the enemy quite a bit. It sounds like.
Oh yeah.
What? How did that look? I mean, you were close enough to see their equipment. Were you close enough to see the men themselves?
Oh
the
yes.
Germans?
Oh yeah. Gosh, yes, we would go down a road, and they would get, because we would be firing along the ditches and anywhere and everywhere as we'd go down. And some of these guys would jump on, they had a lot of motorcycles. They were some kind of their motorcycle brigade or whatever you want to call them.
Mm-hmm.
And they'd come up behind us. And without a doubt, it was because they were scared and didn't know what they were doing and all that. But you'd have to watch as they'd approach from the rear. You'd have to shoot them with your machine gun.
I mean, they had gotten behind you somehow, or just
Well,
inexperience?
You know, as we'd go through, we wouldn't kill them all because we'd be driving 25, 30 miles an hour.
Okay.
And the ones that we missed, they'd probably get all shook up and scared and everything, and they was trying to get out of there also, and they'd jump on a motorcycle and take off down the road and maybe catch up to us.
Mm-hmm. So after St. Mary Glees was taken, what happened then?
Well, then we went to get ready for the breakthrough at St. Lo, and that was the big breakthrough going into France, or in the main part of France. And there they had that big aerial bombing. Oh, I'd hate to say how many thousand bombers would fly over. In fact, the sky just turned gray, and you'd see a lot of planes go down, and then you'd see the parachutes come out with guys coming down to earth, and some of them you never saw any parachutes. And we were just waiting there in the staging area. And I don't know how long that went on. Probably says somewhere in the books, but I'd say 8-10 hours maybe, I don't know. And then after they quit the bombing, then we took off. And
Now you're talking about the breakthrough. There was like a stalemate for a while, and then St. Lo
yeah,
was
there's a stalemate there for probably a week maybe, and we would kind of recheck our equipment and get ready, and they'd send us out on patrols to bury the dead cows or the German soldiers or something. And you'd go out there and you'd see this herd of cows in the pasture, all their legs sticking up there, and I'd say, "Oh, I don't smell anything. Do you smell anything?" Us with little slip trench shovels try to bury a cow. Well, that was the most ridiculous thing in the world. So we never buried anybody either. We did find a few Americans soldiers and we'd get their dog tags and mark the spot where they were, but and then they'd come pick them up. That had to be very accurate on the locations.
Why was that?
Well, be sure they got the right, be sure that they got the man and got his name correct and all this.
Mm-hmm. So when the breakthrough happened, what happened after that?
Well, then that was the beginning of the race across France, and oh gosh, we would get sometimes 60 miles ahead of our units, and we'd have to stop and we'd go until we ran out of gas, and then they'd come up and meet us, and we'd run into pockets of Germans all the time, but nothing really, really big. These armored cars are supposed to have the armor like on a light tank, and we was at a roadblock one time there, and we saw this flatbed truck there with a anti-aircraft gun on it, and
is that German?
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so we just crossed a little bridge, actually is what it was, and we tried to circle it and it didn't work, and we came back there and we thought, well, these armored cars are supposed to take care of any, like a 20 millimeter, shouldn't go through that. So we lined up, and we had 3 armored cars, and we overrun it and broke through them and got rid of them and everything. But afterwards, my driver said about that far the shells were sticking through the front of the armored car. So that was the end of our going against anything with a bigger than a 50 caliber or something like that.
They weren't quite what they were cracked up to be.
No.
So you said you referred to the race across France. Where'd you go from St. Lo?
We missed Paris, but we had to stop and wait. We had to get way ahead, and we'd come into a little village, and the Germans was light resistance because they were running away too, and they might be leaving one end of town and we'd be coming in the other end, and I don't know where they'd ever come up with American flags and French flags and stuff and flowers, and people would be out there with bottles of wine and stuff. It'd be like a big parade going in through there. Then when we'd leave the little village, you look back, there wasn't a flag in sight. And kind of amusing that way that they welcomed us in, but they were not sure if they was doing the right thing or not.
Makes you wonder if they had German flags hidden there too, just in case.
Well, sure, I'm quite sure they did. And
so basically this was a series of villages, one after another, that would be liberated?
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
Well, they weren't liberated, but we just, because there's nothing behind us. We were just out there on our own, really. Mm-hmm. And well, we went 90 days without a hot meal from our kitchen.
It was all those A rations you were talking about?
No, we got C rations then.
Okay, what's the difference? What's a C ration?
Well, C ration is it's basically beans in a can, or beef stew, and chocolate bars, and that was about it. You could eat it either hot or cold. And of course we lived off the land too in that period of time too. I mean, if we were in a place where we'd always check up the chimneys on some of these houses.
Right.
They'd smoke their hams in there, and we'd find a few that way.
Now, were these houses that had been abandoned, or did you ask the occupants to leave?
Oh no, they were abandoned. They were partially destroyed, and because our bombers did a lot of strafing and blowing up what resistance that they could find ahead of us. In fact, one time there, we came along this train, and it had been destroyed, and the people were all around there. I say people, 50 maybe. So when we got up there, they all scattered and yelled "Vive la France" and all this stuff, and it was a load of cheese. And it had been. They said that they had came somewhere in eastern part of Germany, up in the mountains somewhere, where they had their cheeses, and they were probably maybe 12 inches round, maybe 3-4 inches thick, and they were delicious. And when we left there, we had cheese thrown all over the back of the armored car, and everybody had them in the jeeps, and so we had some good cheese there to eat for a while.
You said you went 90 days without a hot meal from your kitchen. Is this to take 90 days to get across France, or does that include?
That was Belgium too.
Belgium.
And I got wounded there.
You were wounded in Belgium?
Yeah.
Tell me how that happened.
Well, we had ran into quite a bit of resistance, and we were kind of down in a valley, and the Germans with their tanks, and they had these 88s, and that's a gun that you snap your finger and it's already hit you. I mean, they are fast. You couldn't, if you'd like a lot of our tanks, they'd have a 75 millimeter on it, but you'd hear the bang, and you'd hear it going through the air, and then you'd hear it land. But on theirs, it was just a snap of the finger, and it was there. So if you heard it, you better be jumping right now, or it'd be too late, or quite often it would be too late. They had a great gun in that. They gave us a lot of trouble.
That was an artillery piece, right?
No,
or was that a tank gun?
On a tank,
Okay. So tell me how you were wounded.
Oh, on this area there, they were in the high ground and we were going through a valley. And they were shooting down on us, and there's a lot of mortars too that they had. And we could see the guys that were operating the mortars on kind of a hillside there. And so I was shooting my .50 caliber gun at them, and we were using anti-personnel shells, which were not real effective because they aren't 37 millimeters, weren't that big. And I got hit by shrapnel. I was sitting down in there, and I had my arm up here, swinging your gun around, firing, and it hit my arm. Piece of shrapnel's what hit me.
How bad were you hurt?
Oh, I had it in the arm and hand, in my fingers, and I was sent back to an aid station and then was shipped to England. And then I was there for 3 months.
When were you injured? What was the date, if you remember?
Let's see, it's October 22nd, I think it was. Well,
you were in a hospital in England for 3 months?
yeah. And then just at before Christmas, I had a chance of staying in the hospital there and being a mess sergeant. And I did that for probably 10 days, and I decided I didn't want to do that. And so they were going to send me back to my regular outfit. And so we got on a boat and went to Le Havre, France. And then we got on these little train cars that they have over there, and we went to Paris then. And was it ever cold? We'd stop. Let's see. We'd stop once every evening and have a big meal through a chow line, and you'd get out to stretch your legs, and we were so packed in those cars that some guy would lay down and you had to stand. Somebody else would lay down and he had to stand. And a lot of people, as soon as they got to Paris, where we had a replacement depot, they were sent back to England because they were frostbite feet and stuff. And then I rejoined our outfit about the first part of January again.
And where was your outfit at that point?
We're still on the edge of Belgium, just going into the Battle of the Bulge, or just part of the Battle of the Bulge. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Tell me about the Battle of the Bulge. What was your involvement there?
We were trapped in there too. And we were in this one little town, and we had a way out, but we got cut off. And we had taken a few little towns. I mean, the artillery would bomb the town for, they were small villages, so they'd throw maybe 20 rounds of shells in there. And then we'd go in hoping that we wouldn't run into too many tanks, because when we was crossing from one town to the next town, they could get us there. But once we got into the town, we could maneuver around quicker than the tanks could. So we were able to, with our bazookas and your little cocktails and stuff, we were able to knock out the tanks if there wasn't too many of them.
What do you mean, little cocktails? What's that?
Gas.
Like a Molotov cocktail?
Yeah, same deal.
So, do you remember the name of the town you were at when you said you were trapped? And,
no, I don't. We had a pretty tough time there. We got a lot of artillery shells coming in on us. And we had that day we'd left our armored cars and light tank. We had a light tank with us too, and left that in this one village, and we walked 3 miles down to the next one. And we didn't think we was detected, but they were. And after we got in town there, they threw in a lot of artillery shells. And I was standing in a doorway, or in this little house, and it got a hit on top, which was fortunate that the detonator went off when it hit the roof. Yeah, and I and the doorway was still there yet. So my ears rang, and I guess I bled out of the ears and stuff for a while.
Now, you said the Germans had this town surrounded, or had your unit surrounded?
No, they didn't. We were in another town there, which is probably 3 miles away, and we walked over the other end at night there, thinking that we could come in and find if anybody was there. Basically, was our mission, and they evidently had saw us and pulled out, and then they bombed the town or used their artillery on it.
All right, if I use this outlet,
Sure.
then we don't have to worry about the battery. Okay, I'm sorry about the interruption, but so we're back in the Battle of the Bulge here. But you didn't get injured when that bomb went off, or any of your friends get injured? The one that detonated on the roof?
No, we didn't. We reorganized, and there's only about a dozen of us. And then we went back to our original town, and then the next day we came back through, and of course they had left, and we went on to our next mission there.
Now, were you quite a bit ahead of the other American units then yet, or were they closer to you at this point in time?
We were probably, at least 10 miles ahead of them.
Were you near Bastogne, or was that a different part of Belgium you were in?
That's a different area than what we were in. We were farther north from that.
Okay. So how long were you in Belgium?
Not too long, because we basically got to the border there going into Germany, and we were there for a break. And but we'd have to do a lot of searching out small pockets of resistance and stuff like that, where it didn't, if we'd run into something really big, then we'd back away, and then some division would come up with their artillery or tanks and stuff. And actually in our outfit, our mission really is to search out the enemy and find them, and find out what they consisted of, and relay the information back.
Like you said, scouts.
Yeah.
Okay, so once you got into Germany, tell me what happened then. How did things go then?
Well, we in Hardin Forest, that was kind of rough going, because it was a lot of small mountains and wooded areas and all this stuff, and there's snow on the ground, and it was hard to maneuver. And but we one time there we did stop for probably 4 or 5 days, and we just kind of rested up and took things easy, because evidently we had no missions at that time.
This was inside Germany?
Yes.
So what did you do during that 4 or 5 days?
We went back to a area where we could take a shower.
Okay.
And they had these showers hooked up, and I don't know how many, maybe 20, 30 of us could take one, but you'd soap up with you'd get wet and soap up, and they had enough warm water to rinse you off. And then you went outside, and here the quartermaster was there, and they had all these uniforms that were been laundered and wrinkled and beat up and everything, and you told them what size you needed, and they would search around and find some and throw them at you. So we got clean clothes anyway.
And then after your 4 or 5 days of rest, where'd you go from there?
Well, then we continued on through the Hardin forest, and we ran into these young kid soldiers that were 13, 14, 15 years old. And we'd have an awful time with them. Gosh, some of them are really dedicated Nazis, and they would fight as long as they could. Or the others would really get scared and throw down their weapons. And I remember one time especially there we took off, beat up just a small group of them, probably 20, 30, I wouldn't know what. And of course some of them were killed and some were wounded, and these young kids came out holding up their hands. This one was hanging onto his pants, and we'd yell heist, and he'd raise his hands and his pants would fall down. And he started crying. And, a little bit of humor there. We got a bang out of it. But they weren't very old. They were young ones. Then we ran into some of these that had women in it. And I'll tell you, some of those women were something else. We captured a few of them. And we had this one time there anyway, about 3 of those ladies. And by gosh, bad as any SS trooper we ran across. And so what we did, usually, you know, you get them in a Jeep or something and take them back. Well, we made them right on the front fenders of the Jeep. And then they could reach across and hang on to each other. And the driver, he hit all the bumps and everything, and they really had to hang on. But when we got back a couple miles where we'd leave them with the headquarters troop, they were still just as mean and ornery and defiant as they were when we started out.
Now, I didn't even realize the Germans ever used female troops.
Again, we ran into them. They weren't a bunch of lady soldiers. They were in with parts of their army units.
They were in with men?
Yeah,
Really?
That's where we found them anyway. Now, I don't know if they were actually had a gun and fought against us or what they did, but...
and the reason they were using young boys and women is because they were running out of troops?
Yeah.
How about the German civilians? Did you run into a lot of those?
Not until near the end of the war, before we had much to do with them. And some of the old Dutchmen were pretty, they weren't willing to make friends, and then others were. But we stayed in a house one time there where they had the house with his whole family next to the street, and they had a big archway with a gate in it. And across the archway they had their cattle barn. And then back farther they had their horses and sheep and all their other stuff. And that old boy that was the head of that clan, he was a meanie. But a lot of them were real nice people.
Since you were kind of an advanced unit, did you get to some of these German towns? Were you like the first ones there, first
Oh, yeah.
Americans there?
Yeah, a lot of times.
And sometimes you'd run into hostility and sometimes not, right?
Uh-huh. We stayed a couple days in this one town, and everything seemed to be nice. And by gosh, second day, this lady said there's a soldier up in their attic. And so we went up there, and there's two of them up there. They're hiding out. And but she turned them in.
How long have they been there? Just a couple days?
I think they went up there when we got there.
So you didn't run into a lot of armed resistance in the German towns?
Oh yeah. When we crossed the Rhine River, we had an awful time there. We had tanks chasing us around the block, and a lot of artillery shells, and a lot of small arm fire. We had lost a lot of casualties in those kind of deals.
Did you lose any friends that you'd made during the war?
Oh yeah, there's only from our original troop, and we were broke down into 2 platoons. And in my platoon, there's 3 of us that, at the end of the war, was still there yet.
What happened to the rest?
I wouldn't know what the percentage was, but they were wounded or killed. We had quite a few killed.
Did that make you kind of reluctant to get to know your fellow troops, knowing that something might happen? Was it, did you kind of remain aloof, or did you become good friends because of what you were going through?
Yeah, we had a bunch of recruits come in from Carolinas, and we had a bunch of them come in from Boston, and let's see, and some from Virginia. Seemed like when they came in, there was like 8 or 10 of them come in as replacements, and they'd be all from the one part of the country. Now I don't know how that worked, but that's the way it was.
Were most of your original people from the Midwest or from Iowa, or?
Most of them were from South Dakota, Minnesota, and Iowa. And then we did send out some cadres, and then we started getting in, we got some people from Texas and stuff like that, but
were there any other of your friends from Iowa Falls that went into the service about the time you did, or after the war started?
There was one guy from Colder. We went in together to Des Moines, and we both ended up in South Dakota, but he transferred to the Air Corps.
Okay.
And so I didn't see him until after the war was over.
Okay. So going back to, well, go ahead.
When he got out of the service, he rented a little plane. Now I'm not sure where, from Hampton or from Des Moines or someplace. And he flew under the power lines in Colder, in town there. And they caught him, and he didn't fly after that.
He must have been a good pilot.
He was.
Back to when you were in Germany, then, you say there were a lot of towns when you first crossed the Rhine where there was German resistance. But later on there were some towns where there wasn't any. Is that right?
Yes, yeah, there'd be some that wasn't any. Let's see, we would, we'd run into some, or it so happened 2 or 3 times that we would get into where there's an airport. Air Corps was stationed. And on those deals, we would get our whole troop together, which would include about let's see, we had 3, 6, 9, 18. We'd have about 25 armored cars. And we'd start at one end, and we'd just drive down the runways and into the buildings and everything, firing as we went. And a lot of times we were unexpected. There'd be mechanics there working on planes and stuff like that. And so we would cover the whole airport and the buildings and stuff. Then we'd turn around and try to make it back again. And I did shoot a plane down with my .50 caliber. The guy was taking off, and I got him.
At the airport.
Yeah.
And where was that airport at?
Oh, somewhere in Germany. I don't know where. Yeah, you never knew. Basically, they had the towns on your maps and stuff, but they didn't mean anything to you.
Mm-hmm.
So you'd.
Were you moving pretty fast at that point across Germany?
Yeah, we were going pretty good.
And
then just before the war ended, we were in an area there that was in the, I don't know, in the mountain area there anyway, and we didn't move too much then. Our kitchen had caught up to us, and we were organized as a troop again, or company. But most of the time we operated just as our own little platoon. We had one officer and the rest of enlisted men. And in my outfit, or my platoon there, we went through too many officers, and so we just didn't have any there for, oh heck, a long time.
Too many of them were killed or wounded?
Yeah, too many of them were, they didn't have the knowledge that we did. I mean, I had a first lieutenant come in, and he was just came out of West Point. And every time I wanted to talk to him, I had to jump out of my armored car, run over to his, climb up on the side, stick my head down in there and talk to him. And we had him about 10 days, and they shipped him back. He just wasn't cut out for that type of stuff. The one thing that I thought, and which helped me so much, was the fact that that I had almost 2 years of training, and we'd get these replacements that had basic training, and that was about it. When I was having my training, well, I trained recruits there for a while back in the States here too, and so I'd go through, I suppose I went through about a half a dozen of those 9-week training sessions. So I was in pretty good shape, which you'd never believe now. And you got more knowledgeable all the time.
There was more time for your training because the war hadn't started yet.
Yeah.
Whereas these other guys, towards the end of the war, you said 9 weeks was what they usually had?
Yeah, some of them were in there, had been in the service for, 6 months. And so they basically didn't know a heck of a lot. They learned fast, or they got in trouble.
What was your rank there towards the end of the war?
I was a staff sergeant. I was acting platoon leader, I guess you'd call him. They was going to give us, there's 2 of us in our company that way. They was going to give us a field commission, and we were up for it, but paperwork didn't come through.
Before we talk about the actual end of the war, anything else come to mind about in Belgium or Germany? Any other incidents or confrontations with the enemy that come to mind?
Oh gosh. When we were going to cross the Rhine River, we had got up and got into this residential area, which was all evacuated. And right next to the Rhine River, these were stone and brick houses, or buildings. They were 2 or 3 story high. So we were getting a certain amount of artillery fire from across the river all the time. And so one day I was up there, I think it was in the 3rd story, and their toilet, it didn't work, but as a toilet, it was a place you could sit down. It was like in a little closet. So I was sitting there, had the door closed. I heard this darndest noise, and this artillery shell came down through the roof, right in front of my door, and on down to the basement. It didn't explode. So when I opened up the door, there this big hole was.
Yeah, I suppose there's some funny things that happen in the middle of all the
Oh,
tragic
yeah.
things and
Gosh, yes.
terrifying things.
I know one place in France there, we had a couple French people come with us. They wanted to come along and they'd show us the towns and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so in this one town, they would point out the collaborators. They'd want us to kill them, but of course we wouldn't do it. Anyway, this one town, it was a large, almost a castle, big house. And he said that they were the collaborators. And so we did go up there. And these guys kept pointing and jabbering and everything. We didn't know what they was talking about. But anyway, we understood what collaborator meant. And so anyway, one of the Frenchmen was saying that they had a big wine cellar there. So we went in, and evidently there must have been, oh gosh, a lot of the families had went in there for protection, or because there must have been, oh, I don't know, 15, 18 women, and not many men, because they were all in the service or gone or whatever. And so we went down into his wine cellar. And if you saw pictures of these big old wine cellars down in Germany and stuff, he had one. And so we indicated to him that we wanted his best wine and champagne. And he did. He went and got it and came and brought it to us and brought us glasses and stuff. But we told the other people that we wouldn't do anything to him. And we ran into that people wanting to point out the Nazi lovers and that to us all the time. But we did have a couple of those Frenchmen killed that were with us.
A couple of the Frenchmen that collaborated?
No, that came along with us to kind of inform us of the countryside and the territory or the towns around that area and stuff.
And they were killed like artillery fire or something?
Yeah, by gunfire.
Mm-hmm. Anything else before we get to when the war actually ended?
Oh gosh, I can't think of anything there.
Where were you at when the war in Europe came to an end?
Leipzig.
And that's close to Berlin, isn't it?
No, that's
Oh, that's in
close to
Poland, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay.
We met the Russian army there.
Tell me about that. I mean, your unit actually met a Russian unit, or?
Yeah, we stayed there for probably 10 days before we pulled back. And the funny part of it there, we went to this place, and here all these boxes were. And they were treasures, guns, dishes, and stuff that the German officers had gathered up from the town and boxed all up, and they was going to ship them back to where they lived. We ran into that quite a bit. And
I mean, they had looted the town, and
yeah, they were.
But they had to leave too quickly to
Yeah,
take them with them.
they didn't get it shipped back. Oh, I got to tell you about another thing. Back in France there, we were the 82nd Airborne, and into before we got to Paris, and we overrun this German headquarters, and they had the paymaster there, and they had all this French money, and at that time this French money was good money, and so I don't know who did it, but I didn't. But I had like a duffel bag jam-packed full of French money, which is good as gold here. And I had, I don't know how many, it must have been half a dozen, the 82nd Airborne riding on the back. And they had their pockets full of that money too. And we was drinking their good wine and all this. And I remember that time we stopped down by a creek, and it had rained, and we were kind of waiting there to take off again. And they was sitting there, and they was taking their money out and counting it, and the wet money they was throwing away. I'd love to went back there, and the dry money they stuck in their pockets again, and I still had this great big bag full of money in the back end there, and I had it tied onto the back, and I took 1,000 franc note, which is a $100 note, and I put it in my billfold. And 2 or 3 days after that, we were getting into a real tight situation, and so I cleared off everything on the back of the tank, and I took that bag of money and just threw it off the tank with everything else. If I'd been smart, I could have wrote my folks' name on that and had somebody in our headquarters unit there, like the mechanics or somebody like that. And when they came up with mail call or something like that to them, I could have just sent that on back to home. And at that time, there's no censorship on it, and they'd have just took that whole thing and just sent it to my folks.
How much do you think was in there?
I had no idea.
A lot, though. Huh?
Oh, it must have been, I don't know. There could have been I don't know what. It could have been 100,000, because these $100 notes, when I got in England and in the hospital there, after we was getting so we could move around a bit, they came around and asked us if we had any money we wanted to transfer into English money, because then later on we'd be able to go to town and stuff. And I said no, and they said, any French money? I said, yep, I got it. I said, how much is this worth? And he said, that's $100.
The whole bag was full of those.
Yeah, so I got $100 anyway.
Tell me about the Russian troops at Leipzig. You said you were there quite a while before they came? Or,
No, actually, we must have got there within a day of each other.
Okay.
They were some of the, well, we'd run into these, before that, horse-drawn artillery and stuff, and they'd be old wagons and stuff they had confiscated from the French. This is what the Germans were.
Mm-hmm.
Well, these Russians, they were in much better, or much worse shape than they were. They had absolutely nothing, and some of them was even pulling two-wheel carts, and they had the old horse-drawn artillery, and they weren't very good fighting force, really. There wasn't any tanks in that group that we ran into there.
And how long were you there with them?
Oh, about a week, maybe 10 days.
Did you have much contact with them while you were there?
No, not too much. They kind of were in one part of the city, and we were in the other part.
Two groups got along okay.
Oh yeah, there's no problem there on that.
Well, tell me about where you were when on VE Day, when the war was actually over. Where were you at? Were you in Leipzig yet?
No, we were, well, yes, we were there. No, we weren't either. We had pulled back to Germany and was in a little town there, and we had had our troop together again, and we had our own kitchen and all this stuff, and we were just waiting because they knew that something was going to happen, and we must have been there for a week, I know, and oh, there was the German men were kind of dog robbers in our kitchen and stuff, and they helped do the dishes and clean up stuff and all this type of stuff. But basically, we were just sitting there waiting. We lived in this one house and had a few beds in it, and we just kind of stayed there and waited.
And how did you hear about the war being over?
It came down to us from our headquarters, I guess, and they said it was all over with. And this is, what, in April, wasn't it? It's cold yet. There's a swimming pool there, and it was cold water, and we threw a few guys in.
So there was some celebrating.
Yeah, yeah, there was a winery, probably 3-4 miles from there, and some of the natives around there told us this, and so we went over there with a jeep, and it wasn't only a winery. They had these great big vats in there, and the workers had stayed there and kept on taking care of the stuff. They made champagne too. And they had the champagne in 50-bottle cords, I guess, or what do you want to call them. It was wooden with wire wrapped around it, and then all the straw and stuff, and it had the sleeve over the champagne bottles and all this stuff. So every day we'd go over there and we'd get a 5-gallon water can full of wine and a case of the champagne, and we celebrated that way. We must have did that about, I don't know, we must have been there a week anyway. Then we withdrew back to in France there, near Le Havre, or not Le Havre, but near Cologne. But Cologne wasn't anything that way. I'd went through there when the fighting was on, and you could spit over the biggest building.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, it was destroyed.
So you really weren't in Germany very long after the war was over?
No, no, we weren't. And then we all got reorganized there, and of course everybody's talking about how many points you had and everything to get out. And I had all kinds of points. And then they came around and said that they were looking to form cadres to go fight in the Pacific. And they was going to form them right away. And they were looking for people to join that up, join up in it. I think there's 4 or 5 of us that did. And we were supposed to go out with a first lieutenant's commission and maybe a captain's, but they didn't know for sure. And then, of course, before the cadres got formed, then it was over in the Pacific, and so then we opted to come back home.
So you volunteered for one of those cadres to go
Yeah.
to the Pacific, but before it could be formed, the bomb was dropped, and
That was the end of it.
do you have any opinion on the use of the bomb? Do you think that was a good idea, the atomic bomb?
Oh, I thought it was a great thing. It saved a lot of lives. Destroyed a lot, but I mean,
So how long was it before you actually got to come back home?
well, I came home in October.
And was that by ship again?
Came home to Queen Mary.
Hmm.
That was the way to come back home.
Yeah. You have any idea how many troops were on there with you?
Oh, I don't know, thousands.
Pretty big ship. Huh?
Oh, yes. One day, well, coming back, had some pretty good crap games going. And one day the captain of the ship came by, and I wasn't in this game. I was there though. And he looked at it and talked a little bit and asked where you were from and all this stuff. And the next day they came out and said that there'd be no more crap games on board ship. He says when there's more money in one hand than what I make a month, he says that's getting too big.
So did you sail back then to what, New York, or where? Did
Yes,
you,
New York.
And then you went directly from there back to Iowa?
Went back to Chicago, and I was released through Fort Sheridan at Chicago there.
Completely discharged
Yeah.
then? So then you came back to Iowa from there?
Yes.
By train?
Yes.
To what, Des Moines or directly to Iowa Falls?
To Marshalltown and then to Iowa Falls.
And let's see, your parents were living here in Iowa Falls at the
Yes, they
time?
were.
They were pretty glad to see you, I imagine?
Oh, yeah.
How long had it been that you'd been gone?
Let's see, been what, 3.5 years or...
And you hadn't been back to the States in that time?
Let's see. We were in, let's see, been 43. I was back and discharged in, what, 40, latter part of 46. So that would...
Okay. And you were wounded one time.
yeah.
Do you have any effects from that wound? Or?
No.
That's good. Anything else you can that comes to mind you think that you'd like to comment on, or any other experiences? Certainly saw a lot of action, it sounds like.
Can't think of too much. There's a lot of humorous things and fun things that you did too along the way. But nothing too much. We did run into an area there where they had the German officers go for R&R, and all the women were there yet, and beautiful women, everything. They were supposed to have the German babies, and it was coming up for the super race and all this stuff, and we were all eyes when we went around that area. But and then also we did go by the concentration camps where they burned everybody. We didn't stop there, but there had been a unit through there ahead of us, and all the Jews were walking skeletons. They had all wore striped like prison uniforms, and some of them didn't have any tops on and everything. But I never saw so many. You could actually, like looking at an X-ray, their backbones and ribs and everything was, and they were kind of wandering around aimlessly, and some of them was just walking to get away from there. I don't know where they thought they were going, but that was a terrible sight. We didn't go through the camp itself. We just went by the outer side of it.
This was in Germany?
Yeah.
You don't know which camp it was?
No, I don't. I don't recall.
How long had it been that that camp had been liberated? Just a short time?
Well, it couldn't have been over, I wouldn't know what, a few hours maybe.
It was a big camp?
Yes, it was.
Yeah, but that was something to see.
Yeah, that was bad.
Anything else you can think of?
No, I guess not.
Looking back on your service days, I imagine you're proud of what you did for your country.
Well, it was quite an experience. I'm sure glad I had it. I don't think too many people were able to go through all that.
You saw a lot of history in the making, didn't you? Okay. Anything else you can think of?
No.
Very interesting. Thanks very much. I really appreciate your time. A lot of interesting experiences here.
Did you tell him you lost your finger?
Yeah.
Well, that is from your injury?
Yeah.
I thought maybe that came later. Oh.
No.
So you do have a lasting effect from that.
Yeah.
Too.
Yes, he does.
You know, we always used to say, get that $1 million wound, you know, you took your gun and shot off your... I always said I missed mine and just got part of it.
Well, could have been a lot worse, I guess.